way or not?
Well, our next guest is Sonny Dykes, the head coach at TCU. A great story last year, played for the national title. And, Coach, we want to discuss your Frogs, and we will. But the rule about when a first down occurs, the clock will not stop unless it's at the end of the last 2 minutes of the first half and the second half. You play fast. You want to get as many plays in as possible. Is that something that you're okay with, that new rule? Is that something you suggested as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know how much that's going to affect the game. I mean, I think pretty substantially. One of the things that made college football different maybe than the NFL was your ability, if you were down 3 scores in the fourth quarter, your ability to be able to come back and win a game. Because the clock did stop on a first down, and it gave you a chance if you wanted to play at a really fast tempo to really try to extend the game, get more plays, and like I said, create an opportunity to make a comeback. And now I don't know that that's going to happen as much. I mean, that clock's going to be running much more than it has been in the past. And so, I think it's going to reduce the number of plays. I think I heard you guys allude to this earlier. I don't know that the issue with and the length of the games has that much to do with the number of plays as much as it does to do with commercial breaks and reviews, instant replay reviews, and all that type of stuff. So, to me, I was a little surprised. This was something that got brought up and then all of a sudden became a rule. I was a little surprised that there wasn't more conversation about it in college football. But I can tell you this, I mean, commercial breaks aren't going to go away. They're certainly not going to reduce the number of commercial breaks that we have, and they're certainly not going to reduce the time that they have for advertising. So, I think this is one of the things that has to change.
Well, Coach, you kind of already made a preemptive strike, right, when you hired Kendal Briles, who we covered here for a long time. I've watched most of the games that Kendall's ever played for. I don't think he knows that the play clock is as long as it is anyway. So wouldn't that kind of be a benefit to you guys that he's there? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I do think that if you went back and you looked at us last season when Garrett Riley was our offensive coordinator, the faster we went, it seemed like the better that we ran our offense. And so is when Garrett moved on to Clemson and that job became open, one of the things that I wanted to try to do was play a little bit faster. I think our players are comfortable playing fast. Chandler Morris, our starting quarterback, was raised in a fast-paced offense, going running Randy Allen's offense at Highland Park High School. And so he's accustomed to that. I felt like our players were accustomed to that. We practiced that way. And so that was one of the criteria that I wanted to look at when we sat down and said, okay, who makes sense to hire in that spot? And I've been really happy with Kendal. I think he's going to do an outstanding job for us. I think his offense and the style really fits our personnel. And I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Coach, just how do you feel about where you guys are at this point? Obviously, the last week before a game week, all this build up to get to this point now, just a lot of change, though. We're losing a lot of veteran players, has been well documented. Just what's kind of been the story of the offseason or the fall camp for the TCU Horned Frogs, in your opinion?
Well, it's been good. It's been good for us. As you said, we did lose a pretty good number of players last year. Obviously, started with our quarterback, and we lost a couple of really good receivers with Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis and Tay Barber. But we've been able to add some really good players to that equation as well, and so we're excited about our wide receiver room. We feel like we've got a lot of depth. We feel like that's probably one of the strengths of our team is our depth at wide receiver. We added transfers from Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU, Minnesota. All a bunch of guys that are really talented players that I think have come in, and these guys have been everything that we thought they were going to be up to this point. And so, we already felt like we had some good receivers returning, and all those guys have done is add to our depth and create a lot of competition for receiving spots. And so, we feel good about that group. We needed to add a couple of defensive linemen to try to replace Dylan Horton and some other guys that were pretty productive for us. And we found a couple of guys that we think can help us. And then we signed a really good freshman class, and a couple of those freshmen are good enough to where they're going to be able to get on the field and help us as well. So, we feel like we were much deeper on our defensive front than we were last year. And specifically, at cornerback as well. We've got 7, 8 cornerbacks that we feel like, can all contribute in different ways this year. And last year we were about 3 deep in that room. So, we're excited about the depth, trying to replace a couple of starters up front. Went out and found a couple of transfers that have come in and provided depth as well. And then some of those young players have developed like we hoped. So, we're a deeper football team, and now we have to see if those guys can raise their play and try to play at the standard that, Quentin Johnston played at last year, and Kendre Miller and some really good productive players for us.
I know you don't have to think about it this way because it's reality, but can you imagine what it would be like to have to do what you're trying to do, but without the benefits of the transfer portal as everybody has gotten so used to nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no secret that we would not have been, in the college football playoff last season had it not been for those transfers that we were able to bring in. And some of those guys weren't some of the big names in our program, but they provided a ton of depth, a ton of leadership, made a lot of plays, and gave us an opportunity to win some football games that we probably wouldn't have been able to win before. So, we feel like we had a stronger transfer year this year than we did last year. We felt like we brought in the right kind of guys. I mean, they're all good teammates. They all like each other. They've really blended well into our culture. And so it's been a real strong addition. Some of those guys have turned into some of the best leaders in our program, and, they've come from a lot of successful programs. And so they know how to win, and they know what it takes to win at a high level. And, we're excited about them.
Sonny, the Chad, of course, Morris's son, Chandler, he was your starter last year. We know the story. Eventually, Max Duggan had an incredible run, and so did you. Is he where he was last year when he won the job? Yeah,
I think he's significantly better. He's just been in the offense longer. I think he's a year more adjusted. I think having the opportunity to watch Max have the kind of season that he had last year and learn from that ride that Max went on, from basically backup quarterback to Heisman Trophy runner-up. And so, there's a lot of things that went into that. And Chandler had an opportunity to sit back and watch it all and learn. And so I think he's a much better player as a result of that. I think the change in offense really suits his skill set. Our quarterback will be out of the pocket a little bit more, throwing on the run, and Chandler's really strong doing that. A lot of quick passing game. Chandler's very, very accurate. It gets the ball out very quickly. And so I think that transition has also really it's going to really fit his strengths and what he can do as a quarterback. So excited to see him, go out and play and perform. He's really played well up to this point. And so, this week's going to be an important week for us as we start kind of getting into Colorado prep and get a game plan and decide, okay, these are the things that we're going to do, and here's how we're going to try to attack Colorado. So it's going to be a big, 10 or 12 days for our program as we start to get ready, and I think everybody's excited about it.
Is there something to him being a coach's son that maybe he was able to deal with it in modern college football better, of being the starter, losing the job to a guy with just the incredibly hot hand that is not necessarily the norm anymore in college football?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think he's been around the game his whole life. I think he understands, sometimes things don't go as planned, and certainly, he had won the job, and we felt like that he was going to, have an excellent year for us last year. And, and he gets injured in the Colorado game, and then, and then Max comes in and does what he did. And so it was, it was a good lesson for Chandler. And I think, as you said, his dad's obviously been a very successful football coach. His dad could give him some great advice on, how to handle it and how to learn from it. And as I said earlier, I think he's a lot better quarterback having gone through it.
Sonny, how do you prepare for Colorado? Brand new staff, so many changes, massive amount of transfers. How do you go about your business, or you just make sure you focus on you?
Well, there's a little bit of that. I mean, I think particularly in the first game, you always have to do a good job of not beating yourself. You've got to not have any catastrophic plays. Don't have a punt block. Don't give up a kickoff return for a touchdown. Something like that could really, change the game. You have to make sure that doesn't happen. You've got to do a great job taking care of the football. You've got to limit pre-snap penalties, whether it's false starts, whether it's substitution errors. alignment errors, all those type of things. You have to be really sound with those going into game one. And so that's really got to be your focus. But as you said, I mean, we don't really know exactly what we're going to see from Colorado. Obviously, we've studied, what they've done in the past, what Deion did at Jackson State, what his coordinators have done at previous stops. But you just don't know how the players that they have and how they're going to fit into those schemes. And are they going to be in 11 personnel as much as they were in the past? And, what's their personnel groupings going to be? Because that's going to determine a lot of their run game and just all these questions that we're not really sure of right now. And so, it does really put the onus on just focusing on ourselves, making sure we can make adjustments as the game goes on, because we're going to have to do some adjusting.
Coach, we covered Jared Wiley in high school, got to talk to him at Big 12 Media Days. He always had the big frame, but looks like he's in immense shape, seemed really excited for the upcoming season. How big was it to have somebody with his experience back for your team and your offense, and just what are you expecting out of Jared as far as taking the next step this season?
Yeah, Jared's a big weapon for us. I mean, he's physical enough to be an inline blocker and does a great job in our run game. He's also athletic enough to split out and you can isolate him and get into some sets where he's the only receiver to a side. He can play outside, he can play inside. He's 6'7", so he's a big target. He catches the ball well, runs well for somebody his size, and so he's a guy that's going to be a big feature for us, in our offense. And just because he can wear so many different hats and do so many different things, he can line up in the backfield and he can be a matchup problem. And so he's had an excellent camp. He really has. He's a much more consistent player right now than he was a year ago. And I think, again, he fits into our scheme really well, and his skill set does. So I expect Jared to have a big year and look forward to watching him play.
Coach, are the new, especially in this situation with Deion Sanders, where, you don't know, the roster is completely new from a team you played just a year ago to, you can watch film from Jackson State, but the coordinator is even different than the one he had there. Is this maybe as far out as you have to go to figure out tendencies as maybe you ever have before?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's always tough when you have a new coach. But it's even tougher when you have a new coach that has 70 new players. And so, there's no reason to even watch the film from Colorado last year. We're not even wasting our time watching that. There's just not going to be that many guys that played in the game for Colorado. They're going to play in this year's game. So it's a little bit odd. It's a little strange. Obviously you got to go back and watch his son Shadur and see how he played at Jackson State and see what his strengths are. And, they've got a lot of really explosive wide receivers. They've got a running back coming over from Houston that's a good player as well. And, they've added some really good speed. I mean, there's a receiver that's come over from South Florida that's one of the elite kick returners in the country. And they've obviously got a good two-way player that played for them at Jackson State. And so they're going to have a lot of options. They're going to have really, really good skill. And so we're going to need to make sure that we're ready to play. I think that the strength of our football team is going to be up front, with our defense and offensive lines. And so that's going to need to be a big strength for us as we go get into this game against Colorado.
Coach, did you see any signs of entitlement, or did Kaz Kazadi end that the first day of off season?
Yeah, you know what? This group has been good. I love this group because they've never really talked about last year. I think they understand that this is a different team. A different set of leaders, a different set of guys that are going to have to step up and become, big time players for us. And there's really no carryover. I mean, what you want to have is a successful program and a program that has a lot of history and a lot of tradition and knows how to win. And, you're not going to establish that in 2 years. And so, we're going to have to go out and earn everything we get. No one's going to be scared to play TCU. We're going to have to do what we did last year, and that's play well in every single game. I thought we played really well for 14 weeks last year and didn't play well in the national championship game. And it's going to take that same kind of consistent performance this year to have a chance to have a good football team. And we'll see if this team can do what they did last year. I mean, last year's group showed up every week, rolled their sleeves up, went to work, prepared incredibly well, and went out and played well. And that'll be a big challenge to see if we can do that.
I know that, and thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. The TCU SMU series eventually looks like it's going to go separate ways. As someone who's a college football coach, and you understand business, and that's probably what's happening here, but the rivalries, are we starting to maybe have some of those disappear because of money?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, I think everybody's trying to do the same thing and figure out how to get to the college football playoff. I mean, that's, if you sit down and you ask the people that are the movers and shakers in college football, they're the conference commissioners, they're the athletic directors, and everybody's vying to get as many teams as they can into the playoff. And that just generates so much money for the conference and so much money for the institutions. So, I think everybody's trying to figure out how to put themselves in the best situation to get in the playoff. We were playing 2 non-conference road games a lot of years. There aren't many big-time college football programs in the country doing that. Those teams that have been in consistent playoff teams and have played at a high level and won at a high level, play 2 non-conference home games every single year, and sometimes 3. Most of them play 3. And so, when that happens, it changes your scheduling philosophy, and we're trying to do the very best job that we can to give ourselves a chance to go compete at the highest level. And so when that happens, I think sometimes rivalries disappear a little bit. It seems to be kind of the standard around college football today. In
line with that, as somebody who was at one point in time the head coach at Cal and playing in the Pac-12, you're now in the Big 12, and all that's taken place over the last few weeks. Your thoughts on what is obviously a great deal for the Big 12, that they've strengthened their ranks. They're bringing in some new schools, not only this year but next year now as well. And obviously a little bit more trouble for at least the time being, some schools potentially in the West. Just Coach, how do you see all of that from your standpoint? I'd imagine it's a bit of mixed feelings, but could you explain your side of things?
Yeah, it's a little bit kind of like we talked about earlier. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, I'm in the Big 12, coaching in the Big 12, so I think it's really important for us to have stability for our league. And I think in today's world, expanding is important, and I think it's a sign of strength, particularly when 2 of your member institutions are leaving, with Texas and Oklahoma moving on. And so I think it was really important for us to go out and expand it, but at the same time, if you do that, then the demise of the Pac-12 happens. And, you had 4 institutions that moved on to the Big 10, and you had 4 that are coming to the Big 12. And you hate to see that happen, but at the same time, it seems to me that's in some ways, I guess, progress. The Pac-12 was a great league. There's a ton of history in that league. It was something, when I coached there, it was something I thought would go on forever. But the leadership in that league wasn't very strong. And I think that we're fortunate in the Big 12 to have, Brett Yormark as our conference commissioner. I think he's very innovative. I think he's very bold. I think he's very creative. He certainly, in my opinion, has put the Big 12 in a position of strength. And so he's done a fantastic job of doing that, but you hate to see it at the demise of a league like the Pac-12 that has so much history.
Sonny, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and good luck the rest of the lead up to your opening game with Colorado into the future. We appreciate it all. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys as always.
As always, you too. Sonny Dykes, head football coach at TCU. Man, they do